Welcome to the Solid Verbal.
The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo.
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. Ty Hildebrand here, Dan Rubenstein all the way over there in blustery New York City. You can find us, as always, at Solid Verbal on the Twitter, at solidverbal.com on your internet browser, and, of course, on Facebook and FanCred as well. I'm joined by Dan.
Yeah.
Sir, how are you?
I'm good. It's been a long time since I've done sort of a regular show.
Yeah, how's it feel?
It feels all right. I was in Arizona, then came back, and it was signing day, and I was in the studio, and we did the show with Bud, with you, obviously. And now I'm back in the Solid Verbal West studio. I'm feeling pretty good. Caffeination levels are very solid. Excited for tonight's show. It's actually been an eventful week for Oregon football, believe it or not, post-signing day.
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah.
Breaking news! You got Big Vern coming to town.
Big Vern.
Yeah.
Vernon Adams. I had heard about this. I have been hearing about this for a while, that it's sort of been rumored. But Vernon Adams, who, of course, is a record-setting FCS quarterback for Eastern Washington, put up stupid yardage and numbers against Washington this year. I think the Eastern Washington team, those of the red field, put up about 50-some-odd points against Washington this past year. A couple years ago, beat Oregon State, and he appears to be at least a very good Pac-12 quarterback with the numbers he put up against those semi-real teams. And then ridiculous numbers against everybody else. Transferring to Oregon as a graduate transfer, will not be on campus, I believe, until June, which is not ideal for picking up, not entirely new, because concepts are similar to what they ran at Eastern Washington. But Oregon certainly in need of an heir apparent to Marcus Mariota, and even though he will just be in Eugene for a year, could certainly bridge a gap, or more than bridge a gap, with what Oregon returns on the offensive line and at skill positions, and certainly makes things a little bit more interesting for Oregon on the national level, even if they were only thought to be competing for the Pac-12 in 2014 or 15, excuse me.
There's also news on the Notre Dame front.
Yeah.
Mike Sanford.
Did you like my spin on this, Ty?
I did. I did. Thank you.
Mike Sanford. Who is Mike Sanford?
Mike Sanford is the Boise State offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. If you believe the reports from Steve Wiltfong from 24/7 Sports, he is set to take over as Notre Dame's offensive coordinator. This would be a bit of an interesting move. Now, their current offensive coordinator is a guy by the name of Mike Denbrock, and he turned down a head coaching gig, I think, up at Central Michigan.
Okay.
So this is sort of a wait and see kind of thing. But if the reports are true, and we saw Bruce Feldman from Fox reported it as well, Mike Sanford coming over, he's just 32, from Boise to Notre Dame, I think would be a pretty good move, because he had the offense at Boise humming. I got to have a little bit more faith in that than Mike Denbrock, although Notre Dame's offense at times, at least in the early part of the season, was pretty good. So this to me feels like an okay move, even though I don't know a whole lot about Sanford in a big situation like he'd find himself in South Bend.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are very high on this. I saw Bruce and our friend Yogi Roth both extremely confident that he is, at the very least, a rising star in the coaching world, but a good fit. He's very young, as I mentioned, the first Notre Dame coordinator to ever be, allegedly, new Notre Dame coordinator, younger than you.
Yep, there it is.
Younger than Ty. One was at Stanford before Boise State, so certainly his coaching pedigree. His father, the head coach at Indiana State, I guess it's Mike Sanford Jr., also had a stint at UNLV.
Hold on.
Yeah.
His dad's name is Mike Sanford?
His dad's name is also Mike Sanford.
Why didn't he join the Indiana State? They could have been Sanford and Son.
I think at a certain point they may have been, but yes. It's a good move. If nothing else, maybe some fresh eyes, some fresh ears, some fresh coaching on the quarterback position couldn't be the worst. Malik Zaire is a lot of very interesting, intriguing things, but a polished passer I don't think would be one of them yet. So somebody with what Mike Sanford was immediately able to get success-wise from Kevin Hogan and Grant Hedrick these past couple years, I think it's nothing but a positive thing, should the case be that he is going to South Bend. And he's also known as a very good West Coast recruiter.
Yep, California roots.
And Notre Dame certainly has to recruit nationally. Not a ton of talent in their home state of Indiana. So I think it's a big win for the Irish if it all turns out.
Also, if the one and only picture I've ever seen of Mike Sanford is to be believed, he looks like a thinner, visor-wearing version of our friend Brian Fisher.
Oh, yeah? Okay, I could see that.
This is the only picture I've ever seen of Mike Sanford, so I could be dead wrong. Is there any other news worth discussing?
Kirby Hocutt is now on the playoff selection committee, replacing Oliver Luck, who took a position within the NCAA. And certainly if Art Briles' big complaint was that nobody was from Texas in any sort of earnest way, Kirby Hocutt certainly is. Spent time at Miami and now is the current athletic director for Texas Tech. And the most notable thing as it relates to the current committee that Kirby Hocutt seems to bring is the youth that comes with being, well, above 40, certainly. But he is not 55 or older, as everybody else on the committee is. So,
do you think he knows how to use an iPhone?
I believe he probably does.
What about the internet?
Let's not go crazy.
Okay.
But yes, there is a glimmer of diversity now in terms of background on the selection committee. So a slight positive thing moving forward. Other than that, not too much. There's the thing after signing day that a lot of people get up in arms about, with coaches signing a class, position coaches, coordinators, and then taking off. And the kids not really understanding that that's part of football, and it does suck. It drives home the point where you should commit to a school, or at least a combination of a school and a coach rather than just a coach, because in the end, at the end of the day, which is a great cliche, coaches are going to be coaches, and they're going to go. They have to live the best lives for them, and I will echo what we've said before, and a lot of people say, if you are a blue chip recruit, if you're a 4 or 5 star recruit, people will save room for you. Do not sign a national letter of intent. Sign a financial aid agreement that's not binding in the way that the national letter of intent is, and you will give yourself some wiggle room. The big one right now is Roquan Smith, the linebacker from Georgia. Looked like he was going to sign with UCLA. Of course, Jeff Ulbrich looks like he's taking a position with the Falcons in the NFL. And Roquan Smith has not signed a letter of intent as of the time we're recording this, looking at Michigan, Georgia, UCLA, among others. So that's sort of the fallout from signing day. I know Ohio State's running backs coach left, I believe, right after signing day. So we do see instances of that. Nothing new. You must, if you're a recruit or the family member or the coach of a recruit, do your best to educate the realities of college football.
All right. Well, you can find us one more time at Solid Verbal on Twitter. We're also on Facebook and FanCred. Don't forget to head on out to solidverbal.com because Verbies voting is taking place. If you go to solidverbal.com/Verbies, you can vote on all the categories that we discussed a couple weeks ago with our friend Ryan Nanny. We do have an interview this evening with our good friend Bill Connelly, who's going to talk about all things Big 12 and some crazy stats with us as well. But before we do, Dan, we do have a new sponsor.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, my friend.
Oh, I'm all ears.
As the kids say, YOLO.
You're so old.
You only live once, for those of you who have no idea what YOLO is.
Right.
Whether it's spring break or March Madness coming up very soon, these are the perfect times to visit the one, the only fabulous Las Vegas, Daniel.
True.
I have been there for March Madness before.
Nice.
An awesome time. Have you done this yet?
I have been there for March Madness. I haven't sat in a sports book all day wagering, but I have been there and placed wagers while doing other things during March Madness.
Now is the best time to go to Vegas, all right?
This is true.
You got to go to Vegas in the spring. You get good rates, and now you can get better rates if you book through Vegas.com. That's VEGAS.com.
Yep.
You can get 10% off everything on the site, with the exception of airfare hotel packages. So basically everything on the site that doesn't include airfare, all the hotels, the shows, the tours, the VIP bottle service.
Yeah.
If you're into that sort of thing, a lot of deals, Daniel, as you know, come through our desk. We try to pick the best ones. I think this is probably one of the better ones we've seen.
Yes.
If you're not familiar with the site, it's a great place to book your Vegas vacation. All the guys are insiders from Vegas, so they know what's best. They'll hook you up with the best deals. They've also got something called a drop watch on the site, which basically means that if you book, they'll continue to monitor for a cheaper price. If the price drops, even after you book, they're going to let you rebook at the cheaper rate, which I think is a pretty good deal. So if you're interested in the 10% off deal, go to Vegas.com right now. Right. Click on the microphone in the top right corner. Enter our promo code. It is SOLID.
Solid.
You'll receive an extra 10% off everything outside the air and hotel packages. Last time, that's Vegas.com. Click on the microphone, enter SOLID, get your extra 10% off.
Odds are you're probably listening to this show from a cold place.
Yes.
And the desert is not cold, and it is not humid. And even if, like, let's say you're not a big gambler, even if you're not a big club person, even if you're not there for a bachelor party, you can eat famously well in Las Vegas. You can eat very, very well. All sorts of celebrity chef restaurants. So it's one of those things that, you know, a little something for everybody. And I go to sleep early in Vegas.
Vegas.com. 10% off if you use the promo code SOLID. Let's get to our guest of honor this evening. You can find his fine work over on SBNation.com. And Dan, gosh.
It's a website.
Been a long time since we had Bill Connelly on the program.
It's been far too long.
Mr. Connelly, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I was starting to get offended that I hadn't been asked back on. I was worried that I had offended you.
Well, it's all Dan's fault.
Have you been on any radio shows since we last spoke?
Yes.
Well, that's an offense that we took as an affront.
Well, I mean, I realize you're competing pretty hard with the Lafayette, Louisiana ESPN radio station. But
True. You're going to bury them. And when it comes to Lafayette, we're Pat League Lafayette people.
Go Cajuns.
Have you started writing your 2015 previews yet?
Why, yes, as a matter of fact.
What is that process like? When do you start that?
Well, the template, it's all based on templates because, I mean, you there's one every day, and so you crank them out in a whatever hour period of time. But January is basically where I kind of disappear for a while, make sure the template still works, try to figure out how to make things prettier for the next year, and then it's a go. We started with New Mexico State on Monday, getting pretty close to halfway through the Sun Belt. I'm sure that everybody listening has kept up with my thoughts on New Mexico State and Georgia State and Troy. But yeah, no, it started, and it had to start because if it's going to finish in August, it has to start in early February.
But it's not all templates, Bill. I realize you've got a template, but there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of research that goes into all.
Well, there are words too. Yes,
there are words too. What is your process for putting said words together?
Well, I mean, you start with the basics. I have all the last year's depth chart and all that stuff, and I try to figure out as well as possible. The roster updates and whatnot, and so you basically come up with the template for who is returning and the big signees in the recruiting class, all that stuff. So that takes whatever it takes, a couple hours maybe, especially early on here because figuring out all the recruiting rankings for the Sun Belt teams is more difficult than figuring it out for the SEC. But so that takes a couple hours, and then in terms of researching, it is kind of hard at this point when it's not even spring practice yet. To figure out a lot of up-to-date information. And so you look for the end-of-season summaries in the local newspapers and the injury reports and all that. And, read last year's preview. This is my fifth time previewing each of these teams, basically. And so, you kind of come to the table with a little bit of a base of knowledge in that regard. And then after, a couple more hours of writing, boom, you have, including the template, about 5,000 words on Georgia State.
Bill is the champion. Bill is the absolute champion. All right. So we're going to talk Big 12. Is this correct, Ty?
That is what I am told.
We're going to talk we're not going to talk Sun Belt. We will eventually talk about the Sun Belt existing, but we are going to talk Big 12 tonight. They were the conference that felt the most left out, and rightfully so, from the inaugural college football playoff. But it only feels right. It felt right. It feels right to delve into the Big 12 and sort of look back on the season that was and to perhaps look forward using information we gleaned from 2014. So first question to you is basically the Big 12. Actually, it was an entertaining season. It was very entertaining. It unfortunately, I guess, boiled down to Art Briles yelling at anyone with or without ears about Baylor getting wronged by the committee. But to you, when you look big picture, what defined the Big 12 season as a whole?
Well, to me, I mean, the biggest thing was TCU's resurgence. I realize, we at this point we have to filter everything through the playoffs.
Right.
But I don't really enjoy doing that all the time. I like the individual team stories, and TCU coming not out of nowhere. I mean, they were a pretty unlucky team last year, and they were probably better than their record. But to be able to put together another really good defense, again without Devontae Fields, and then to turn the offense completely around, even with Trevon Boykin and most of the same cast, to be able to completely turn that offense around with just a couple of new offensive coordinators, that sets the bar really high for all other new coordinators in the country in terms of what the fan base expects from them. So I was just really, really impressed. TCU's offense was awful in 2013. And, when it was rolling in 2014, there were few better. So that was the biggest story to me. The fact that Baylor had to fight it out with TCU to even talk about the national title was impressive to me.
All right. And I guess outside of it, I think we still want to talk about Baylor and TCU and the whole West Virginia and technically Minnesota mess at the top of the Big 12, even though Minnesota's not in the Big 12. What stories do you feel almost got buried by the mess at the top and that sort of three-way, and Kansas State was in it late, obviously. What do you feel like got buried by the mess of the committee?
Well, Oklahoma State fell really far.
Yeah.
Jarringly far, and that was very surprising, and it opened up questions as to how that could happen. The defense fell off a decent amount, but the offense really, really fell off, at least until Mason Rudolph found his rhythm in November. So that was very surprising to me. Less surprising to me, but still pretty jarring to watch, was Oklahoma going 8-5, obviously. I was screaming from the hilltops, not that fumbles luck at the end of 2013, but I still didn't expect them to go 8-5 this year when the luck not only regressed toward the mean, but just cruised right on by the mean to the other side.
Luck is something we've talked about on this show, and fumbles bounce whichever direction the ball wants to, essentially. There are forced fumbles, there are aggressive defenders, but explain, if you can, if you will, and I know you can and will, what you mean by luck, broadly speaking, and who perhaps benefited, didn't benefit, both in 2013 when you talked about the improvement of TCU, and in 2014, whose results perhaps deceive the quality of play generally.
Well, the easiest way to look at luck and to understand luck is looking at turnovers, obviously. If one team, recovered 75% of all fumbles in a year, or 25%, then that's probably going to turn around the next year. And it probably affected their ability to win close games. Oklahoma recovered every fumble in the Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Alabama games at the end of 2013. And, not surprisingly, they were able to either win a close game or turn a close game into a comfortable win in all three of those cases. And then, 2014 rolls around, and suddenly, instead of recovering 69% of all fumbles, they recover 39% of all fumbles, and they go 3-3 in games decided by 2 touchdowns or less. So, there was more to Oklahoma's turnaround than that. They lost 2 other games that were not by under 14 points. They got crushed twice. But still, that was a huge part of it that they had little control over. They lost to TCU and Kansas State by margins of a pick six. Like, not only did they throw an interception, but it was returned for a touchdown, which is pretty random, even if that Kansas State pick six was one of the worst play calls you'll ever see. And so basically, the narrative that, the fumbles helped to create this narrative that they were a national title contender heading into the season, and then bad luck on turnovers helped turn that right back around and make them even more disappointed than they probably really were.
So I guess from your perspective then, as you are going through rankings and stats, to what degree do you factor luck into your own personal assumptions for who's good and who isn't? Like, well, if you see a team that's really lucky, is your inclination to say, well, I'm going to knock them down a peg because this number is really high, or do you find the contrary?
Well, to me, it really helps you figure out what the starting point should be. Like TCU this year, the way I try to determine what I call turnover luck per game in the previews is basically every turnover is worth approximately 5 points in terms of field position. In terms of the value of where the ball was picked off or fumbles and recovered, and how it set up the other team's offense. So if every turnover is worth 5 points, and we can kind of determine the difference between how many turnovers you had and how many turnovers you should have had, then you kind of get a number for approximate luck per game. TCU was plus 6.5 points per game in luck, mostly because they did not drop the interceptions that most defenses drop. Meanwhile, the other team really couldn't hold on to any interceptions. Anytime they got their hand on a ball, it ended up in a pass breakup instead of an interception. So, I mean, they were pretty lucky. They also won a lot of games by a heck of a lot more than 6 points, obviously. But instead of 12-1, maybe with different luck, maybe they lose to Kansas or West Virginia. Maybe they were more like an 11-2 team that finished 12-1. And so then you start. Then from there you build your expectations on, who are they returning, who did they lose, and everything like that. But I think it helps you set the bar in the right place. And Oklahoma in 2013 is a good example of that. They beat Alabama, they beat Oklahoma State. They finished playing like a top 5 team. Well, they really didn't. They were really kind of a top 20 team. And then this year they played kind of like a top 25 team.
What is the calculation for figuring this out, and how in God's name did you figure it out?
Well, the fumbles part is pretty easy. I mean, right. On average, you're going to recover about 50% of all fumbles in a year. And in a year, like over a 10-year span, you're going to recover about 50% of all fumbles. And then the interceptions to breakups was just a lot of tinkering. Like basically, on average, you're going to have one interception for about every 4 breakups, and it's kind of a mushy number. Like Kansas State's home field scorekeeper is going to log a breakup slightly different than West Virginia's or something, but on average, it's a pretty good indicator. And so if you figure all that out, you can just look at your own fumble recoveries and breakups and interception, and look at your opponents, and you come up with a decent number for that.
What other numbers in the advanced metrics category, because I know this is your world, what other numbers do you look at when you're trying to evaluate a team? Is there anything that you look to first?
Well, the biggest thing is just, the overall numbers that I use, the efficiency and explosiveness numbers, don't really react to turnovers. They're basically just a bad play. And so, and because on average, that does include luck and a lot of other breaks. So, looking at it like that, the overall numbers that we use are pretty good in terms of judging which teams were good or not good, and which teams overachieved or underachieved. So, that's a good place to start. But then also, that close game record, whether it was turnovers or something else, if you were a little too good, if you were Auburn 2010 one year or Florida State through most of 2014, then the chances are, on average, you're not going to go 7-0 in one possession games. And so kind of figuring out close game record and things like that is another good way to set the baseline, I think.
So let's go back then and talk about Oklahoma, because you mentioned them at the top. Oklahoma finishes the year with a very underwhelming record. They entered the season as one of the teams I know Dan and I looked at as potentially a national champion, certainly a Big 12 champion. In your estimation, what was it exactly that went wrong for Oklahoma, and how does it set up for them moving forward?
Yeah, as much as I was trying to mention that Oklahoma was unlucky, their schedule set up perfectly for a run at the Big 12 title. So I kind of figured they were still maybe the favorite for that, getting Baylor at home, getting Kansas State at home. But I think for a lot of this was a kind of a case where maybe expectations and disappointment played a role in how they finished the season. They lose at TCU by 4 points. That's there's no harm, there's no shame in losing to a team that finished 12-1 by 4 points on the road. And like I said, they were unlucky in that they lost in part because of a pick six. So then they go, 2 weeks later, they lose by 1 to Kansas State in a game that not only featured a pick six, but featured a good kicker missing a whole lot of kicks. And then they lose to Oklahoma State in part because a good kicker missed a field goal in overtime, and the randomness that is a punt return touchdown with like 40 seconds left. It took a lot for them to lose those games. And I think, you talk to people close to the Oklahoma program, the disappointment from TCU and Kansas State probably rubbed off against Baylor in terms of getting punched in the mouth and just kind of wilting a little bit. And, certainly they got punched in the mouth early in the Clemson game and wilted then too. So, you could argue that expectations played a role in the disappointing performance, but we've kind of, determining the mentality of 85 players is kind of hard. So, in a vacuum, you had a team that was unlucky and lost 3 games because of bad luck and got romped twice and probably wasn't nearly as good as it was supposed to be regardless, I guess.
So on that note, and obviously even without being anywhere near the playoff, the Big 12's 2 biggest programs remain Texas and Oklahoma. 2 programs who they overhauled personnel in the case of Texas. Charlie Strong sort of had a no-nonsense, zero-tolerance policy, and they lose, of course, some key contributors to graduation in the draft. Oklahoma, obviously, with the coaching staff headlined by Lincoln Riley coming in, the ECU offensive coordinator. Who are you buying low on between Oklahoma and Texas over the next couple of seasons? Oklahoma probably has the better base layer at this point of talent, and I guess why?
Well, I do think that Oklahoma, wasn't, just as they weren't as good as everybody wanted to say in 2013, they weren't as bad last year. And so they don't have as far to rebound to become a top 15 caliber team again. Now, whether that's enough to be a top 15 caliber team and compete for the Big 12 when you still got TCU and Baylor out there, we'll see. But I do think that they're going to be a top 10 or top 15 caliber team again before Texas is, that's for sure. Texas, I don't know about the offense. So that staff, hiring Joe Wickline, basically giving them the offensive coordinator position to get him away from Oklahoma State. It was a really awkward arrangement. They didn't seem to really know what they wanted to be this year, and Tyrone Swoops is not the quarterback for whatever they want to be. And so that defense is going to be ridiculously nasty really soon, but you still need an offense, especially in the Big 12. And until we see what they want to be and we see them recruit to that, I kind of have to wait on them.
All right. And the offense that we are most confident in moving forward, just because of how well they've been able to plug and play over the past 3 or 4 years, is clearly Baylor, even in losing Bryce Petty, who's been a fantastic trigger man for the Bears these past couple of seasons. Are they at the point, through recruiting, through staff continuity? Obviously, Art Briles has had opportunities to go elsewhere and has stayed in Waco. Are you confident in that train just rolling along, plugging and playing? New running backs, new receivers, new offensive linemen, and obviously it's Seth Russell. Could be one of the incoming freshmen, obviously highlighted by Jarrett Stidham. Is your confidence level at the same place it's been these past couple of seasons with Baylor and continuity?
Yeah, the defense is obviously, it's always going to face some questions, but, I think Phil Bennett has a pretty clear identity in place there, and they're going to give up yards, they're going to clutch and grab and push you around and dare officials to call 20 penalties on them in one game, and once a year that will happen. The UCF game in 2013, the West Virginia game last year. But they know exactly what they want to be, and there's a lot of value in that. I was just talking about Texas not knowing what it wants to be on offense. Baylor knows exactly what it wants to be on both sides of the ball at this point, and it's not always going to work, but it's usually going to work. And so it would be really surprising to me, at the very least, if they ever, if they fall below about 9 wins anytime soon, maybe 8, if things break just right. But they are a very, very steady, proven program at this point. And maybe Texas and Oklahoma, because of pure recruiting, have a higher ceiling, but they haven't been anywhere near that ceiling in a while. And Baylor seems to have reached a pretty good cruising altitude here.
Two teams that it feels like, even when they're off their game, are going to produce entertaining television. In terms of sheer entertainment, Texas Tech and West Virginia were entertaining much more often than not in 2014. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury is probably much more in the public eye than Dana Holgerson, and had a disappointing, I think they only won 2 games in the conference this past year, the Red Raiders. West Virginia, probably sort of a tale of two seasons. They start off really nicely. They get that big Baylor win, look very good early against Alabama. Then they sort of fall back down to earth. Who are you buying medium on between the Mountaineers and the Red Raiders, who, granted, Texas Tech basically lost everybody heading into 2014?
Yeah, I think everybody, because of, we did the West Virginia effect on Texas Tech last year. They looked great in upsetting Arizona State in the bowl. Therefore, they're going to be that great all of next year, and it never, ever works out that way.
Right.
And so, I didn't see 4-8 coming with Texas Tech last year, but they were clearly pretty overrated coming into the season. They were still really young. They were still really thin. They gave up almost 500 points on offense in 12 games last year. They had a lot, and granted, like a fourth of that was TCU, but still, but they had a lot going against them, and I think West Virginia is a lot closer to being stable to me than Texas Tech. Look at what games did Texas Tech lose that were close. They lost West Virginia, but most of the other losses were by, 15, 20, 30, 40 points until that Baylor game at the end of the year. So I'm definitely not going to buy anything on Texas Tech anytime soon, although, the recruiting's fine. The coaching staff seems pretty good. So, I mean, maybe they eventually get somewhere, but I'm going to just pass on them right now. West Virginia needs a quarterback. We saw what happened when the starter went out, and so we don't really know what to expect from them moving forward. But I do feel more comfortable with them, especially on the defensive side of the ball at this point. And so if we're talking about buying medium, I'll go with West Virginia. Any reason to believe that Kansas State is anything but thoroughly Kansas State moving forward? Yeah, I don't really expect I don't expect them to necessarily compete for a Big 12 title again in these next couple of years. Losing Lockett, and the whole, it was funny. I talked to a K-State friend of mine. The storyline about just how many walk-ons they had last year. Just a crazy number of walk-ons and such great development and all that. But then they play Auburn, they get pushed around in the trenches, and my friend's like, well, is that good? Having that many walk-ons, is that really a good thing against a really athletic, UCLA or Auburn or Baylor or whoever? Do we need a little bit more talent in there? And they're not really getting that more talent, but they're still, they're pretty much guaranteed to win 8 or 9 games. And if things break right, if they go 7-0 in close games or whatever they did that one year, 2011, then I guess they could still compete for a Big 12. But they're, in that 3, 4, 5 range in the conference to me in terms of just, stability and health, I think.
My favorite blog post all last season came from our friend Travis Haney over at ESPN.com, who in one of his items wrote about Kansas football that they could be a dark horse to land Jim Harbaugh. Alas, they did not land Jim Harbaugh. I think they still are. We just don't know when. They did not land Jim Harbaugh. They've got David Beatty from Texas A&M. He was the wide receiver and recruiting coordinator. How does this work for Kansas? He's not Charlie Weiss, so that in and of itself makes it a pretty good deal, but
he was there during the glory days, Ty.
Right. Okay. What's your stance on where Kansas is headed, and particularly how they improved after Weiss left?
A lot of red flags went up with this. First of all, when you don't even have coordinator experience and you get a head coaching job, that's a little scary. We don't ever know. There's enough of a change in just general responsibilities when you become a head coach in terms of organization and hiring good guys and whatnot. We never really know who's going to be a good or bad head coach. But, no coordinator experience. He's a quote-unquote recruiter who has been recruiting at a really good school recently, an easy-to-recruit-to school, and now he goes to Lawrence, Kansas, and he's expected to draw a bunch of 4-star talent to Lawrence. I don't really see that working out incredibly well. Maybe he's the most organized guy in the history of the world, but given the choice between him and Clint Bowen, I think I would have gone with Clint Bowen.
We're not crazy, though, for thinking that Kansas got better after Weiss left, correct?
Well, no, I think they certainly did. Clint Bowen, I really thought he performed well enough to give himself a shot at the real job, at the head coaching job, but it didn't really work out. And that Beatty was able to convince Bowen to stay, proved he's a pretty good recruiter, I guess. And maybe that's a good sign, but I think they absolutely improved. I just don't know really that the ceiling is that much higher at this point.
Dan, trivia question. What is Kansas, the state? What is their motto? The what state?
Is it the Jayhawk State?
I believe it's the Sunflower State.
Yes.
Sunflower State.
Let's move on. Let's go to Iowa. Iowa State. We love talking about Paul Rhodes on the show, Bill, because he came on the show. He seemed like a nice guy.
So proud.
So proud. It seems as if each and every year he finds some way to knock off someone he shouldn't. This year, 0-9 in conference, 2-10 overall. Did not go well for the Cyclones. Now, if you look in various spots across the internet, Paul Rhodes' name is squarely on that hot seat for 2015. Why did it bottom out the way it did for Iowa State? Granted, it was never great, but it seems like it really took a step back this past year.
Well, technically, both of the games they won, they probably shouldn't have. So there's that. Iowa and Toledo were both better than they were. So, the fact that they won those two games, the upset streak is alive, I guess. But no, I mean, this is just pure talent. He doesn't have enough of it. And, it seems like each, cycle of guys of hard-nosed players that goes out the window, the guys who come in to replace him aren't as good. And Mangino was a nice hire for the offense, but there's just, you still need athletes. You still need good players. I mean, he just doesn't have enough.
Fair enough. Let's take a step back for a second, because you're a Missouri guy.
Yep.
Missouri for a long time was in this conference. They aren't anymore now in the SEC, doing quite well in the SEC, I might add. But a ton of controversy with the Big 12 not having the conference championship game. Seemingly, the commissioner comes out in favor of the current system. As Dan mentioned earlier, Art Briles, maybe not so much. Where is this headed, Bill? How long before we see a conference championship game? Do you think there is enough pressure on the Big 12 to change this?
See, the thing is, that seemed to be the lesson everybody got was, well, we were punished because we don't have a championship game. Well, no, that's not really what happened. Ohio State was rewarded in the end because they had one more opportunity to prove themselves, and they more than proved themselves against Wisconsin. But, the Big 12 had a championship game for however many years, and they lost a bunch of national title contenders because they had a championship game. They lost Nebraska in, 96? They lost Oklahoma. Well, they could have lost Oklahoma, I guess. They lost Missouri in 07. They've lost a lot of teams, and, because there is a downside also to having a conference title game. And just because it didn't work out this year, it didn't work out this year because Ohio State peaked at the perfect time. And maybe because TCU had to play Iowa State the last weekend, I don't know. But I think in general, we're kind of generalizing in that regard. It wasn't because they didn't have one. It just worked out the way it worked out. It might have worked out differently another year.
All right. Well, this Saturday is Valentine's Day, Bill.
Yes.
And even though you are knee deep in the Sun Belt, as it were, you are known far and wide as a romantic. You like food. Yeah. You're attentive. Husband, father, everything. So my question now to you is, if you are not within speaking distance of your lovely wife, what is the plan for Valentine's Day? And what is the most memorable Valentine's Day you had either with your wife or perhaps in your youth? And
with your new Cuisinart fondue pot, will you be going with the chocolate, the cheese, or some sort of broth?
Not okay, Tyler.
I'm more of a cheese than chocolate guy, I think. Sorry, Spencer, if Spencer's listening.
Right.
No, my wife came up with a really good idea this year, which is, she's not exactly a sentimental romantic, but the fact is, so you have a kid, and for 3 years, they slowly they go from a high-maintenance pet to a human being. Mm-hmm. And then they turn 3, and they actually notice stuff and remember stuff and enjoy holidays. And so basically, on Saturday, we are going to have a romantic dinner, the two of us and a 3-year-old, with the heart-shaped cookies and whatever we end up doing for dinner. So it's a 3-person romantic holiday, and I'm okay with that.
What's for dinner?
I'm not completely sure yet. She has a 3-year-old palate, so heart-shaped hot dogs doesn't really work. So I think we're still trying to figure that part out. But we asked her what she wanted yesterday. She wants balloons, she wants candy, she wants cake, she wants cookies, she wants hearts, she wants everything. She's not going to get everything, but it should be fun.
I mean, the only difference between current age and 30 is a diamond ring. All the other stuff seems like it still applies.
Right. She doesn't really. Plastic rings seem to be okay with her at this point.
That's a cost savings right there.
Will you be watching anything on TV? Will there be an outing before or after?
It's Valentine's Day. Charlie Brown is calling our name.
Nice.
You can get all the Charlie Brown DVDs for about $8 on Amazon. So we've been. That's been my excuse for watching those again. It's the Easter Beagle. Charlie Brown is on deck.
Nice.
So no, I mean that's pretty much our plan. We're gonna. Saturday is kind of the 3 of us day, and we'll have fun with it.
All right. Listen, I'm not at that point in my life. Ty, you're closer to that point, so I hope you are taking notes.
I've been, yeah.
Good. Yeah, I think we're going to keep this Q&A discussion, Valentine's Day discussion going, but I'm positive Bill has better things to do.
He couldn't possibly, but again, his name is Bill Connelly. You can find his fine work over on SB Nation. SpiritGrid.com apparently writing previews for all teams. Are you doing
Who's next?
Are you doing Fordham?
I wish. Fordham needs to join they need to be the missing piece connecting UMass to the rest of the MAC. That would be awesome. But no Fordham on the list. Thursday is Idaho. This one's been the first struggle so far. The energy has kind of run out on Idaho. But Friday, I think there's, another iffy Sun Belt team. Next week it starts getting fun with the Louisiana schools, with Georgia Southern and whatnot.
Idaho football, the struggle is real.
I will alert DC and tell them to fortify the servers for our February Idaho preview.
That's right. You can't handle it. Can't even try to handle it.
All right. Bill Connelly, SBNation.com. Thanks as always for your wisdom, and we promise to have you on again soon.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right, Dan. Bill Connelly from SBNation.com. The man is still writing previews. You'd have to ask whether he ever actually stopped.
He is, when I say he's a machine, he's a charismatic, likable machine, because he is the hardest working man in college football. And second place is mere marathons behind him. It is not even close.
So I'm not an SB Nation employee per se.
Right.
I know a lot of the SB Nation types.
You're SB Nation adjacent.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You're the shill for the SB Nation, and that's understandable.
Absolutely.
Who wins in a just general intensity off between Bill Connelly and Bud Elliott?
Bill is not intense at all.
Well, he's pretty intense if he's writing previews in February.
Well, no, the part of his job, there is intensity associated with it. But in terms of an intense presence, there's Bud Elliott, and then there's everybody else at this company. Bud is charming and intense and knows everything, and I would say the intensity is stronger with Bud with 9 Ds.
What kind of animal is Bud Elliott? Like,
He's a bear. He's a country bear.
A country bear?
Yes, absolutely.
What about Bill Connelly then?
Bill Connelly is he's sort of a kangaroo, I would say. I don't know, kangaroo. I'm trying to just decide if it's between looks and just general activity and presence.
His feet are way smaller than an actual kangaroo's, just for the record.
Which animals are really smart?
Dolphins?
Yeah. I wouldn't say he's a dolphin per se. I don't know. What do you see yourself as?
I see myself kind of as a dolphin, actually.
Okay.
Sort of as a dolphin.
Myself as a hyena.
A hyena? People don't like hyenas, Dan.
I know they don't.
Actually, that might make it very accurate.
So I'm fine with it.
I go dolphin. They're friendly. They're intelligent.
Did you see the story that was on? God, I don't know what it was in. If it was in New York Magazine or something like that. There's a documentary coming out about a gentleman, I want to say in Australia, but I don't want to besmirch the good names of Australians if I'm incorrect.
Yeah.
Gentleman from somewhere in that region, New Zealand, Australia, New Guinea, whatever it is, where he carried on an extended relationship, a sexual relationship with a dolphin. There's a whole documentary about it.
Okay.
So that's something to, take a look for on Netflix while you're waiting for House of Cards, which did not come out. It briefly leaked, but House of Cards still a couple weeks out. So yeah, look up the sexy dolphin documentary.
Now would be a great time to segue into our second sponsor of the evening.
There it is.
Speaking of nature, how about naturebox.com?
How about it?
How about NatureBox because life is hectic? How about NatureBox because sometimes it's hard to make a good snacking choice, especially when you're hungry and looking to eat anything not tied down. Do what we do. Do what Dan and all his boys up in New York do.
Yeah.
Get a delicious and healthy snack option from naturebox.com. Over 100 nutritionist approved snacks. NatureBox has something for everyone. All of the snacks have 0 artificial flavors, no artificial colors or sweeteners, no trans fats, no high fructose corn syrup, Dan. Snack in style, but snack healthily as well. Do it in the afternoon when you've got that sudden urge to eat something. Maybe grab some, sea salt Pop Pops. How about some toasted cheddar sticks?
Do it.
Blueberry Nom Noms. Nom Nom Noms, Dan.
Oh, don't ever do that again.
Try NatureBox for free.
Yeah.
All you got to do is go to naturebox.com/verbal. You'll get a trial box featuring 5 of their most popular snacks. Free snacks. You heard me correctly. All you need to do is go to naturebox.com/verbal. if you're going to snack, at least be smart about it. Do it
right
with
now.
Nature Box, Dan.
I had not one, not two, but 3 separate Nature Box snacks today.
Really?
I had pineapple rings, I had the poppy seed sticks, and I had, again, the sriracha cashews.
Yeah.
Out of this world. Yeah, I would recommend Nature Box, and I would recommend it in a passionate way. Can you play me the breaking news sound, please?
Breaking news!
Travis Wilson cut his hair.
Whoa!
Utah quarterback Travis Wilson cut his hair. There's a giant ponytail that he's donating to charity. It looks great. And I just figured no other show in the universe would play a breaking news drop for Travis Wilson cutting his hair.
Nope, but we will.
Yes.
So he's donating it to Locks of Love or something of that ilk?
Locks of Love. Yeah, one of those types of, let me see what it says.
What's the longest you can grow your hair?
He's donating it to Team Never Ever Give Up. Jesse Reese Foundation is a global movement of compassionate people dedicated to helping kids fight cancer to never ever give up. There it is. That's who he's donating to.
What's the longest you can grow your hair?
Like time-wise?
Or the longest you've gone. I won't go lengthwise because
it was probably freshman, maybe sophomore year of college, and it was maybe maybe like March to June, like a solid 4 months. Giant fro.
I was going to say, what happens if you just let it go?
Yeah, it just goes out. It doesn't go down.
I don't know if
disgusting.
I've never actually tried. I feel like every guy kind of goes through that phase where they kind of just grow it to see what happens. And
yeah, but you said that about the beard, and your beard was not a true let it go beard.
I pansied out.
You did.
I pansied out. I feel like I could pull it off with the hair, but I work in a professional setting.
You know what? You get a poof too.
On the sides, I get a poof. I'm like an owl.
You get a real big side poof. And this is not to buy into the popularly held theory about you, but it is a little bit like old school Jackie Chan-esque.
I can't help it.
It looks great.
It's a genetic thing, Dan.
I understand. I think it looks terrific. And don't tell fiance Kate, but wedding look.
How long do you think I could go before she told me to cut my hair?
I would say do the beard thing before the wedding. It's sort of like your last wild man chance.
Huh. I've got one going right now.
Would work care if you grew the beard in like a clean way?
No.
Like you kept your neck clean? They wouldn't care.
No, as long as I did my job, there wouldn't be a problem there.
That's the mysterious day job. Okay. So maybe that's a clue. Yeah, we do have some questions. Speaking of love, you mentioned Locks of Love.
All right, here we go.
Another organization.
I need a sound. Let me see. Let's play this.
Give me something romantic.
Congratulations, Skippy. You've got mail.
You've got mail on the Solid Verbal.
There you go. A little David Letterman, a little You've Got Mail from the old AOL days. We need to update this soundboard. I need to get on that.
Yeah, we definitely should.
So,
and on a similar note, you are taking over for Brian Williams for 6 months. Did you want to announce that now? Because that all happened on Letterman. We're going to have to edit
this out. I can't disclose that quite yet.
Okay, that's fair. This came to us last week from Matthew.
Yes.
And it's probably too late now, but I think it's good. It's a good question, a good universal question. So we're talking Valentine's Day. We're talking love. We're talking romantic advice. Cannot turn to Dr. Jane for this one because she's been married for years, and I don't know that she could answer this question accurately or nearly as accurately as I could. So this comes from Matthew. He said, I have a first date with a girl on Wednesday, so I guess that's tonight.
Yep.
This is my first official post-college dating adventure. As such, her and I really know nothing about each other, which is what the first date is for. Right. However, how much communication should I expect to engage in between now and the first date? None, minimal, some. Thanks, Matt from Maryland.
Yeah. I answered him, by the way.
I've dated more recently than you have. What was your answer?
I wrote back to him because I realized that he wouldn't hear an answer on the show before the date. I said, first off, there are too many variables here. We don't know how they met, if they met online, or if they met in person, if they knew each other previously. We don't know much about that, but what I would say is if it's someone you're potentially into, I would not try to upset that apple cart. I would not even go near it. I would maintain the status quo until after the first date, because we all know actions speak louder than words.
True.
Get your way to that first date and then play it by ear, but don't do anything to sully your good name before you actually get there.
Yeah, I don't mind, and I've done this. It's good to set, much like you're trying to do when you're trying to get tan, it's good to set a nice base layer.
Agreed.
You don't want it to be silence, like, because maybe that gives off the impression that you're not super excited about this date or something like that.
Or that you're nervous, right? No, I'm with
nervous. So I wouldn't go with like the "How was your day?" every day, something like that at the end. I wouldn't do that. That's pressing a little bit too much. But if there's something funny, if something just jumps to your head about something and it's sort of innocuous and it won't offend the other person, something like that, I think that's okay to send something, maybe some sort of weird internet thing, to just have a conversation starter.
Yeah.
So by the time you have your actual first date, you might have an inside joke. That's a great thing to have before a first date, an existing inside joke already. So I would say light conversation about nothing too personal, anything like that. But nothing too much.
Basically, don't be Kelsey from The Bachelor and talk about a dead fiance.
I don't know that reference.
Or something like that. You don't want to go that route. Right. I did mention to him that if you are going to discuss anything with your female subject in this case, try to build towards the date. As you mentioned, try and give yourself a joke, something you could talk about, an easy icebreaker once you actually get there. And by God, I forgot we have the perfect romantic sound.
Yeah, me too.
What is more romantic than Frank Beamer's 8-win bed?
That is true. There's especially if you watch that video of Frank Beamer at the basketball game, laser-like focus. Laser-like focus.
With the kid crying next to him?
Yes. So that is
great.
A man who can block out things easily. Chris, this is on Facebook. On a blind date, what's your emergency escape story?
Ooh.
Emergency escape story.
I've never actually... I've never actually needed the escape pod. In one instance, I did download an app for my phone that supposedly you could program and it would call you at a certain time or make your ringer go off.
Right.
So that you could escape and, extricate yourself from the situation. Sure. I have never actually needed to use the escape pod, though, Daniel.
The go-to talking point. So, I mean, there's the really easily executed storylines or topics. It's like, where are you from? Where did you go to school? How long have you lived here? Stuff like that. And those are good jumping off points. But emergency escape story to get out of a blind date, that's more difficult. I would see it. The good thing about me is, but it makes it a little bit more difficult, is that I work in sports full time. So I got to watch a game, but you can watch games out. You can be watching a game out to get out of a blind date or extricate yourself from an uncomfortable situation. I would just be straightforward. If it's to the point where I need to leave, be like, yep, I gotta go. I've got a thing. Like it doesn't really matter to me that it's weird. You just gotta go.
Hold on. People listen to this show for you and your quick-witted creativity.
Yeah.
You're telling me now your move is to say, sorry, I got a thing.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it would be I got to get home, or I'm meeting a friend for a drink after this, or yeah, it's just something very direct, or just like, all right, should we get the bill? If it's just drinks. If it's in the middle of a meal, you got to finish the meal.
You got to finish the meal. I'm thinking drinks. Bring up something controversial. Politics is the worst thing you could talk about on a blind date.
No, because then you're still there and uncomfortable.
Just take a controversial viewpoint.
Oh, yeah, that's one of those things where I just cut off the limb. I just go. Let's see. Here we go. This is from MW. M-Dubs. I've got two questions. One, you're single on Valentine's Day. What do you do? Go with the flow or just go with the anti-Valentine's push? Okay, don't go with it's just a Hallmark holiday, Singles Awareness Day.
Oh, come on. I was big on Singles Awareness Day.
Oh, that's stupid. Come on, don't do that.
You're stupid.
Hang out with some single friends. Go get drinks, whatever. Don't try to pick up people. That's weird too. Just enjoy your night, or treat yourself to go pick up some awesome meal and watch a movie, and the next day is the 15th. Don't wallow. Valentine's Day is not a huge deal.
I went with the Happy Singles Awareness Day AIM away message for 4 consecutive years, Dan.
Ty.
I am unapologetic of Happy Singles Awareness Day.
So are you doing fondue this year?
I might be doing fondue this year. I'm not kidding.
What are you making?
We haven't decided yet.
Okay.
I've been planning wedding stuff all year.
This is true. Here's my sole bit of advice for Valentine's Day. Once again, no matter how fancy, no matter how low key you want to be, don't fall into the like chocolate card flowers thing. Think about what makes your relationship unique and steer into that. If it's just going out and getting burgers and going to a movie, if it's doing fondue, if it's cooking something that is meaningful, if it's going to some sort of body of water, if whatever it is, just make it like relationship plus. Just do whatever it is that defines your relationship in an attentive, meaningful way. Don't fall into the generic trap. That's my only bit of advice.
Put some effort in.
Put some effort in. It doesn't have to be overrated, saturated, overrated with sweet in it. Like that doesn't matter nearly as much as just making the person you're with feel loved.
What is part 2 of M Dub's question?
How generous of a love? No. Rank your top 3 dating. I is very generous.
I'm quick on the soundboard, Dan.
Rank your top 3 dating shows.
Ooh.
And he says he would lean with Blind Date near the top. I always like Singled Out.
Okay.
I liked Blind Date. The old Love Connection. You know what I really like? And it's not technically a dating show, but it's in that same vein. And maybe they did a dating version of it and I'm just dumb. You remember the clips of the old Newlywed Game?
Yep.
I love that concept of asking one side of the relationship a bunch of questions about the relationship or themselves, and then asking the other participant. So it's, your husband said that every day when he gets home from work, he's got to have this. And he's talking about like his easy chair and a finger of bourbon or something like that. And she's talking about something that's far more passionate. I like that in a dating show. The your husband said, your wife said, your significant other said.
Is Blind Date anywhere on Netflix?
Oh, I don't know. I actually met with the executive producer of Blind Date once.
To be on the show?
No, not to be on the show. He was like, when I was trying to be a comedy writer in LA, which went terrifically, as you can see. One of the things you do, and this was when I was like 21, one of the things you do is you figure out who might have an in, who you can just get a meeting with to maybe get an internship or a PA job with. And my dad's cousin like went to high school with this guy who is the executive producer of Blind Date. And so basically I met with him and he was super nice and like, said, hey, you should talk to this person. You should talk to this person. Very nice. Was the, executive producer of this big show, syndicated show. And those shows make money.
Yeah. He
put me in touch with the production company that brought The Office over from England to NBC. And I met with a couple of people there just about being like a writing room PA. So basically like Xeroxing things and buying groceries. That would have been my job. And I was told I was probably going to get the job. They just had to talk to 2 other people. And then I was told I didn't get the job, but I would get a job on an Andy Richter NBC sitcom that had been picked up for like 6 episodes. And then I was told, oops, we already promised that job to somebody else. And it was at that point where I was like, I am young and don't need to make a bunch of money and I'm going to go film my own thing. And that's when I created my website and then eventually got into sports full time. So thanks to the executive producer of Blind Date, I'm here today.
I don't have quite as flowery a story.
Right.
I can tell you though that
what are your shows? You like The Bachelor and Bachelorette, or at least The Bachelor?
I don't even count those as part of this
definitely
question.
A dating show.
Is it?
Oh, definitely. They go on dates every week.
I'm a huge fan of The Bachelor. I've been you got to start watching so we can talk about it. We got a long off season to fill.
This is true.
I had a big kick back in the day for Blind Date and The Fifth Wheel. Remember The Fifth Wheel with Aisha Tyler?
I do remember that. Yeah.
I developed a genuine disdain for Aisha Tyler.
Oh, I love Aisha Tyler.
I'm in on Aisha Tyler now.
Okay.
But back then, for whatever reason, she had like this snarky tone of voice that I didn't like on Fifth Wheel.
That's what they wanted, yeah.
It is what they wanted. It fit the billing. But
right.
Fifth Wheel, I was into that. Could never get into like some of the MTV shows, like Date My Mom, like those weird. I was never into that.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I liked Room Raiders wasn't bad. I like that concept. That's creative. I would say I'm mixed on the concept where it's like Bachelor number 1, Bachelor number 2. We go on a romantic date and we get mugged. What do you do? Like those were pretty good because they would always be like 2 guys who were relatively normal, 2 girls who were relatively normal. That'd be like, I just, walk on the beach and whatever. And then there'd be like one guy who'd get like real double entendre with it.
Yeah,
like I'd mug you. Like what? What was that?
Do you remember Joe Millionaire?
Of course I do.
I was a big fan
Evan
of Joe.
Marriott.
Yeah, we watched that in college and drank to it.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Other dating shows, I'm sure.
There are weird shows like Dating Naked. Now I can't get into that stuff.
Haven't watched Dating Naked.
No, it's a weird show. Don't watch that.
So what were the other MTV shows that aired at like 4 p.m.? There was Room Raiders. There was Date My Mom. What was the one where Eliminate?
Oh, yeah.
I liked Eliminate.
That wasn't horrible.
And by the way, if you lived in Los Angeles between, what are we talking about? Like 2003, 4, and 2007?
Yeah.
And you were between the ages of 19 and 25 and didn't look like a swamp monster, there was a very good chance that if you found yourself somewhere in the Los Angeles area, like Hollywood, West Hollywood, Santa Monica, you were asked to be on that show.
What was the one show? Next?
Yes.
Where they would just yell next in the middle of a bad date?
Yep. I think that was that paired with Eliminate?
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah. That was I thought those were a good block of shows.
That's a great question, MW.
I'd love to host a dating show.
We could probably host a dating show.
That's true. Well, we have had verballers that dated and got married.
We've done it once.
In the span of this show.
We've done it once, and depending how it goes for Matt, you never know.
This is true.
All right, what else?
But these were 2 verballers.
What else do we got?
Let me get back to this question. Final question of the solid verbal. If either of you were the Bachelor, granted, you have not signed your marriage license yet.
No.
So it is not too late. If either one of you were the Bachelor, what would be your ideal group date? I imagine Dan's would have something to do with food. You know what? I caught a clip of last week's Bachelor and they went river rafting, the whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
I think you get a really good sense for people in that sort of situation. Like if they're cool, if they can roll with it, if they're prissy, if they're tough. I like that.
Let me say this.
Yeah. A basketball game would be great.
It would be interesting. You'd see competitive fire come out. Mm-hmm. They've done that on occasion, some sort of group competition.
Right.
I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but the show aired on Monday and we're recording on a Wednesday, so you can earmuff it if you don't like what I'm about to say.
What do you got?
Bachelor Chris did a group date where he took some of them to like karaoke.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
I think that's a good idea. I don't know if it was his idea because I got to believe the producers have a huge hand in what they do.
Right.
But I think that would be good. Something that shows people's true colors.
I think any activity where you can get a sense of somebody's shame or lack thereof. And karaoke's like, I would never date anybody who was like ashamed of me being goofy. Like somebody like that.
I feel like karaoke's a good one.
Karaoke's great.
The worst is what he did with 2 of the subjects this past week. And that is took them by helicopter to the middle of the Badlands National Park, where they had a random bed set up in the middle of the desert or whatever that section of the universe is considered. Yeah. And then subsequently broke up with both of them and then flew off without them on the helicopter.
That's a power move, Ty. That's what we call a power move.
It's definitely a power move. I don't know if they ever got out of there, but don't do that if you're the Bachelor and looking for a romantic group date.
I would say a 4-way game of Scrabble.
Okay.
Like
there are a number of different
pause.
ways that could have gone, but
right. The game of Scrabble I think would be fun. If you are going to consider marrying somebody that doesn't know how to spell basic words, I would say that that's troubling.
Okay.
And it also shows some competitive fire. Maybe even other board games I think would be good in a sort of intimate setting. What else? I think the idea of going on a group date is just madness.
Oh my God.
It's complete insanity.
You got to start watching so we can talk more about this.
What else is there, Ty?
Look, even if you don't watch the previous episodes,
right?
Start on Monday. It actually on Sunday. It's a 2-day.
Oh God!
It's a 2-day event.
I don't have that kind of time.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do. Make time, damn it.
There's a real life lady in my life.
You and the lady friends love The Bachelor.
I know. She watches it, and I still don't.
Come on, man. What are you doing?
I know.
You're gonna throw this whole thing away.
I think I'm all right. Yeah, other group dates. I think you'd be a great Bachelor, Ty.
They wanted me to go on it. They told me I looked like Andrew Firestone. It was weird for me for like a full year. I couldn't get past that.
You'd be great.
I'd be completely overwhelmed. I'd be a nerd.
We'd get weekly misspelled reviews from East Coast Elliot.
Can you imagine the date where I brought her here to watch me do the podcast?
I don't believe that would happen. I don't think that would come. You're doing a what now? Where? Oh, shoot.
What's a podcast?
Oh, wow. I need to get a job and reevaluate my life. Yeah. All right.
My God. You've done this for how many years? 7? Oh, cool, man.
Give us a wedding update real quick.
Wedding update. Things are going well. Awaiting the invites. Should have the proofs in my mailbox when I head out later. And
it's all syntax is correct. It's Kate and Ty, not Ty and Kate.
It is Kate and Ty. Yeah.
The lady is always first.
The lady's always first. Yeah.
Are you going to get some sun before the ceremony so that in pictures you appear to be pretty tan?
I always kind of appear to be pretty tan.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe it's the Italian blood. I don't know.
And the bachelor party is where?
Have not decided.
We're getting down to it, Ty.
I know. I've been dragging my feet.
I'm looking forward to this. Are you settled on your menswear?
I am.
Okay. Has it been tailored yet?
It has not been tailored yet, but
okay.
We're going to kick that process off tomorrow, getting the some of the suits fit and
okay.
Yeah.
Are you doing the traditional toss the flowers thing? Whoever catches the flowers or the garter, any of that stuff?
Dan, here's the problem with that.
Okay.
You might be the only single one at the wedding.
How dare you, sir?
And by single, I mean technically single.
True.
All right. Actually, there might be a few others, but if it comes right down to it, you probably would stand about a 1 in 3 shot of catching the bouquet.
Is that true?
Yeah. Or not the bouquet. You don't catch the bouquet.
No.
I would feel.
Throw?
I don't know what I throw.
Yeah.
I would feel very, very awkward about having you catch whatever I'm throwing and then putting that kind of pressure on you. That's a lot of pressure.
This is true. That is a lot of pressure. But is there going to be the garter thing? Are you getting down on one knee?
I'm not doing that. No.
What are you, Ty?
I'm not doing it.
Okay. Is anybody going to be performing? I know you have a DJ or a band.
We've got the live band going.
You've got the live band, but will like a friend sing a song of either one of yours?
No.
Like there won't be audience performance.
No.
Sometimes you see that.
Not that I'm aware of anyway. I mean, you can go up and grab the mic if you want. I'm not going to stop you, but
sure.
I don't know if taking back Sunday is acceptable at the wedding.
And expected, I know that there's a certain number of invites sent out, but expected attendance number?
Sending out around 200 invites.
Sending out around 200, and like, what are you game planning for roughly of people that are SVPs?
They claim like 75 to 80%.
75. So we're talking about 150, 165.
I'm not thinking it's going to be that low. Somewhere between 180 and 200 are going to show up.
Are you going before the big day? Are you going to get waxed?
Kind of a question is that?
Wow,
where are these? Did you write these down, or are you just going rapid fire?
I talked to our friend Ryan, who is also he's getting married the week before. Okay. I talked to him and his fiance about
is he getting waxed?
Questions. He has a regular waxing schedule already.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered pretty much everything, Dan.
Ooh, I do have one more question because we talked about it earlier on the show.
Yeah.
And this is a very serious question. I don't mean this with any sort of joking matter attached to it. Do you know when you are going to get a haircut before your wedding so that on your wedding you are at the point where you feel like your hair looks the best?
This is an important question.
Yeah.
It really is.
Because I'm going to get my haircut specifically because I have at least your and Ryan's wedding back to back.
Yeah.
I may have a wedding the week before in Atlanta.
Okay.
My girlfriend received we'll let you know whether or not she has a +1.
Yeah, I've gotten one of those before. Yep.
We'll let you know. I'm going down there anyway because we're doing a road trip after. But I need to figure out the timing. I'm thinking it'll probably be like March 26th, 7th, somewhere in there.
See, here's the trick, Dan.
I'm right around 3 weeks is my ideal hair length.
You don't want to do it so early that the lasers on the side of your head have a chance to grow in.
Right.
You need to time that out. So I'm thinking for me, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks before the big day. I
would give yourself that cushion. I think that's smart.
I'm at optimal length about 2 weeks into a haircut.
Will you be completely clean shaven?
I will be. Yeah.
Okay.
Because if I wasn't clean shaven, she'd take off her heel and stab me.
Okay.
She would see
Fair
that
enough.
as a sign of disrespect.
Right.
So we're gonna
Are
have
you
to go
eye to
clean
eye when she's in heels?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm still taller.
All right, I'm excited for this. So you're thinking, so it'll be early April. You will be heading over to get a haircut.
Somewhere in that range, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But
I think it's very important. So you got to start timing it now.
This is probably the one of the questions that you've asked here that I've definitely thought of before.
Okay.
The waxing thing I hadn't considered.
You haven't thought about how many people are coming.
No. No.
You haven't thought about the song.
This is all new to me, but the haircut thing's definitely at the forefront.
Are you having a morning after brunch?
There will be a morning after brunch.
Okay.
You're cordially invited, Dan.
Yes.
All right.
I'm a great brunch guest.
Well, this has been
I'm going to
fun.
come up with like another 30 questions.
No,
next
I know.
week.
I can't wait to do this like 10 more times before the wedding.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like, if we're going to be real here, I should probably be asking Kate these questions.
I'll bring her on the show.
All right, good.
Solidverbal@gmail.com. If you've got a question of your own, that's our email address. Also find us on Facebook on FanCred. And on Twitter, we've had a number of people send us emails or tweets or just drop us a line saying that the feed isn't updated on Stitcher. It will be shortly if Stitcher would write back to me. So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be great. So as soon as they get around to helping us out, we'll be up to date on there as well. Certainly, if you notice any other oddities, don't forget to drop us a line. Let us know. We'll do our best to get that resolved. You can give us a review or subscribe to the show if you go on out to itunes.com/solidverbal. Every little bit helps us raise the profile of the show. If you will be in Texas, about a month out now, hard to believe, we will be doing a live show on Friday, March 12th or 13th at the Four Seasons if you're going to be at South by Southwest. So stay tuned for more information on that as well. Big thanks, as always, to our sponsors this evening, Vegas.com.
By the way, I believe at that show, my girlfriend's brother is going to be there.
Uh-oh, pressure.
I've never met him.
Pressure.
Sounds like a great guy.
All right.
But he's in Austin.
Is he coming to our thing?
I think he's going to. I think he's going to be at South by Southwest anyway. We only met over email. I've met her parents. It's serious.
So if I torpedo the show and decide to go all uncomfortable questions with you, that could be a bad situation.
I should not have told you.
That could be a bad situation for you, Dan.
I handle myself well, I would say.
We'll see about that.
I'm very polite.
Do check out our sponsors, Vegas.com, and of course, our good friends over at NatureBox. For that guy over there, Mr. Dan Rubenstein.
That's me.
For myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thanks again for tuning into the show. Catch you all next week. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.